Now, their manager, Harry Redknapp, told a court last week that he had problems reading and writing, so perhaps it's apt that Tottenham Hotspur Football Club are thinking about opening a school. That's part of the plans now. They're staying put and redeveloping their North London stadium. And Andrew Cryan reports on what they might bring to the classroom table.
The glory days are back. Spurs are winning trophies, sit third in the league and hit the headlines again this week with the news that, having flirted with the move to the Olympic Stadium, the replacement for White Hart Lane was going to be built in the local area. Now, Spurs are not just staying in the same neighbourhood, they're staying on pretty much exactly the same site. The new stadium will stretch into the distance behind me. Now, what we've learnt is that the club recently resubmitted their planning application, and within it, it contains space for an educational facility and quite possibly a school. The idea of using the new ground in this way was sparked by a letter from the Education Secretary, Michael Gove. In August 2010, he wrote to every Premiership club in the country and asked them to consider sponsoring an academy or even setting up a free school. But other football clubs in the London area are already involved in running our schools. This is the Harefield Academy near Watford, set up by board members of Watford Football Club.
To get onto this wall, you have to be national or international level.
The school has a specialism in sport, which they say drives up standards across the board.
The youngsters that are doing sport have driven forward the academic progress by being youngsters who do achieve. Achieving 12 or 14 A to C grades is the norm.
And without Watford Football Club, that would be harder?
Without Watford Football Club, the vision wouldn't have started, and it's evolved into something that we're very, very proud of.
The school is also home to the club's youth system, meaning Harefield has turned out 20 boys in the last few years who have gone on to play professional football.
We know that the majority of our boys, no matter how talented they are, won't play in the Premiership. That's the same up and down the country at every football club. So what we do here is we make sure that we give the boys a safety net. If they don't achieve as a footballer, they get a good, strong education and can use some of the skills that they've learnt through football in another walk of life.
But back in North London, what might a Tottenham school look like? The club are still making up their minds.
Tottenham Hotspur Football Club believes that education has the potential to play an important role in the new stadium. The club has been approached by groups and organisations who are interested in exploring the opportunities on the Spurs site.
But from what we've learnt, the plans may be controversial. Spurs have chosen a group called Way Education to draw up the club's education strategy. The group are unpopular with some campaigners.
I think Tottenham are being naive. Way Education are explicitly about making a profit out of state education. Their business model, which they put forward to investors last year, says that they are confident that they can make a profit out of the current existing levels of funding.
Have you got one of these?
Another difficulty for Spurs could be the local controversy surrounding school reforms in their borough of Haringey. Earlier this year, Downhill Primary School made headlines around the country as one of a number of local primaries that could be forced to become an academy, a political argument that the club may be keen to avoid. In the meantime, though, politicians are almost certain to want to keep being seen to be involved in football.
Andrew Cryan there, always worth seeing Ed Balls again on the football field. And Tony Blair, in fact. Anyway, I'm joined by Rachel Wolfe, director of the New Schools Network. What can football clubs bring, and were Tottenham Hotspur to pursue this idea, why would they be better than, say, the local authority, Haringey, in setting up a new school?
Well, I think Tottenham are a wonderful example of the growing number and range of organisations that are not traditionally involved in education that want to get involved in improving standards for their community and see free school specifically as a way of doing that. So you've seen a lot of football clubs around the country doing this. You've seen a lot of charities.
What could they bring then? What could they bring?
So I think the first thing that they can bring is they can bring a lot of expertise in sport and engaging people. I think a lot of people look up to football clubs. They see footballers as role models, and I think when football clubs stand up and say we want to get involved in education, we believe in education, we want to donate time and money and energy into making schools better, that sends a fantastic message to the community. So for example, Norwich Football Club is helping do the PE lessons for the Norwich Free School, but they're also saying we care about education. I think that really matters. One thing that just
looks as an immediate problem there potentially is the geography, is that there is a good community secondary school literally just opposite. Location matters, doesn't it? I mean, could there be any grounds for having a new school, taxpayer funded, right opposite an existing
We have a serious shortage of places. At the moment, it's mostly at primary.
Well, yes, but
it's going to feed through to,
and it's
going
you
to
think because by the time this came through, it might work. So that's your get out here. Well, let's just say, let's assume that that wasn't the issue.
That's one of it. I think the other thing to remember is that with free schools, you cannot set up a free school unless you have a petition from parents saying this specific school would be the first choice for my child. So unless parents are really getting behind this and saying, yes, this is an alternative we want, yes, this is something we're looking for, this school doesn't get set up. And I think it is time that we listen to parents and listen to communities. And if they are calling out for an organisation like Tottenham or any other to set up a school on their behalf and to get involved, that's wonderful.
Let's bring you two in here, because as far as I know, the free school revolution has not swept into either of your constituencies. Any particular reason for it, Richard?
No, I have an academy.
Academy, free school. You've got one of these new free schools.
There's not much difference between the two, you know. I mean, it is bypassing the local authority.
No, there is, isn't there? That's not quite entirely true. But have you got a free school yet? Have you got anyone interested in a free school?
We are working with some groups in
Somebody in Croydon. I was only going to ask you, if you haven't got one already, why that might be. Presumably you might have a...
Well, but we want to have one, but can I just make the point?
You want a free school?
We want a free school, but we have an academy which is very similar. The last parents' night before it became an academy, 60 parents turned up. The first parents' night after it became an academy, 600 parents turned up. And that illustrates what the point that Rachel was making, is that you've got to have the local community right behind it. And whether it's an academy or a free school, it's the outcome and the enthusiasm.
Diana, but obviously, you know, there are a lot of academies in Hackney, and they've supposedly transformed, they have transformed a lot of the provision in Hackney. No free schools there yet, though.
No.
What about this idea of a free school and, say, a football club doing it?
Well, on the academies, the difference between academies and free schools is partly we gave academies an awful lot of money. I mean, I've got 5 beautiful academies in Hackney. A lot of money was spent on them, far different from the free school model. But we haven't got any free schools yet, and actually we've got rather good primary schools.
What do you think of free schools? Because, of course, you know,
well,
your front bench say they're kind of all right now, aren't they? We're having to embrace them all.
Well, we embrace lots of things now.
But what do you feel about it? What do you
I think we have to have an open mind about them. I mean, with the academies, they were unpopular with a lot of teachers and teachers' unions, but I tell you, every year people are clamouring to get into them. The only thing about the free schools, though, is will they really have the funding? Will they really be able to offer something different? But a football school, let me tell you, anything that gets boys to go to school and stay at school rather than being out on the streets, getting up to no good, must be a good thing. However, I prefer an Arsenal school than a Tottenham school, but that's me.
Absolutely. Richard, you would prefer a Crystal Palace school, yeah? Be honest, I bet you don't support Crystal Palace.
I do.
You do, all right.
Regular attender.
But this idea of football, I mean, what can they bring? Does it just kind of, is it slightly typecasting? Does it, or does it...
I think this is just going to appeal to young kids. I mean, working going to the Spurs school, Arsenal school, Crystal Palace school, you know, that this would be something that they can be proud of, and it would generate the enthusiasm that we need.
It's just a branding. I wouldn't say more than that, but if it's a branding that attracts, you know, young people to come to school, that's fine. But we do have to be careful what you were saying about having it opposite an existing school.
And
we don't want to destabilise.
You'd hope it was more than just a branding. It generally can encourage raised standards for everyone in an area.
And we've seen this. So Everton, for example, are setting up a school for children who've been excluded from other schools. And they're putting masses of time and energy and getting in expertise and working out a different way of delivering that educational model to improve standards. I don't think it's just about branding. I also think it's about people thinking about new ways of doing things. And we are delighted that the government's put extra money. They announced 600 million more in funding for free schools last autumn, because there are thousands of groups we are working with who want to do this. It's really captured, you know, what people want for their communities.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. Well, what else has been happening in this city this week? Here's an idea in 60 seconds.